yesterday we completed the ayat, but I really would like to go over some of the things that we talked about yesterday just to summarize what we were doing. So we started with Allahu la ilaha illa huwa la yajma'annakum ila yawmil qiyamati la rayba fihi. That the Lord Almighty, of course, after speaking about, we're still in the munafiqeen and speaking about the munafiqeen, and still speaking about one, how we would relate to basically relate to the rest of society. Remember, Surah Nisa, Surah Nisa is really laying out the different relationships. So where we started out with Surah Nisa, and where it's talking about the relationship between the believer and the vulnerable, the financial rights, inheritance, the rulings that relate to financial distribution, let's say it that way. Then it goes into speaking about other relationships and how we would organize the other relationships. So Surah Nisa is really focused on those relationships, though. Then it was talking about the mu'mineen, then we're talking about the munafiqeen, then of course goes into the munafiqeen, in where they're still, it's not only financial rights, but Surah Nisa also goes into a lot of details regarding even social rights and of course social justice. So when we basically وَيَقُولُونَ طَاعَةٌ فَإِذَا بَرَزُوا مِنْ عِنْدِكَ بَيَّتَ طَائِفَةٌ مِّنْهُمْ غَيْرَ الَّذِي تَقُولُ, we went into speaking about the munafiqeen and how, of course, the mu'mineen or the Sahaba were knowing, they were capable of noticing. So it was pretty obvious. It wasn't a hidden thing. It wasn't a hidden thing that they didn't know that there are some groups that are really speaking into finding those, those little gaps where they could actually attack the Muslims and all of that. So they were capable of noticing. They knew it, because some of them were saying it outwardly. And remember, they're all one community, to mean one tribe. Or tribes, or at least in one area. So the news travels fast, and they're capable of getting this information to really know that there are some people that were pretending to be Muslim, but the truth of the matter is that what they were concealing is nothing but hate and nothing but kufr. So then we went into certain details of what keeps us away from nifaq, or from hypocrisy. And we talked about, number one, not being focused on the different fears, but focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having the provision, giving, of course, giving our tawakkul to be focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rather than people, and of course certainly doing all tadabbur. So that's bringing in even the mental focus to being focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being focused in defining the world around us based on Al-Quran. Because when you look at tadabbur, remember, it's actually speaking about the implications of things. We went into details with that, the implications of the understanding of the world, for understanding the world around us, and how we put everything within a certain perspective, within a certain, of course, lens to scrutinize the world around us. And of course, it's important that even the relationship, so not only the thought, but even the way that we would relate with our sentiments with the world around us, we would recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one to control all the different outcomes. So therefore, it's not the data that necessarily would determine the result, but the results are determined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You just have to put in the effort. And then we go into the details. Well, what you have to do is that you act in activity. You put in the effort, you put in the activity, whether that activity was in of course, in this the context, in al-qital, or whether the activity was in whatever effort and whatever activity you were supposed to be involved in. The first and most important thing is that you yourself, you put in the intention, you put in the effort, even if everyone else was turning away. And also work on putting in the motivation for and within the hearts of the Muslims. And at the end, you don't control the data and the results that basically happen as the effort that you're trying to contribute in, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that controls it all. And of course, certainly we went into also details of any contribution that you were going to be putting in and contributing, whether it is basically an intercession, or whether that was mediation, or whether that was being in any form of a contribution. You are basically going to be considered not only a number, but you will be, if it's a good thing, then you will get the reward of the good contribution that you had contributed in. If it's an evil thing, then you will be held accountable for that as well. And you will be held accountable and responsible for the result that it led to. And certainly, whenever you would want to reach out to people, you would want to be a mediator, you would want to be a person to give da'wah, you would want to be a person to motivate the believers. Always start with assalamu alaikum. Always start with a good greeting. Reach out to the heart to bring in a good communication, to bring in a heart that is ready to accept the da'wah that you're doing, that is ready to accept even the communication. And of course, because at the end of the day, remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will for sure, with no hesitation, with no doubt, with no change of the decree of the Lord Almighty, He will gather us on Yawm al-Qiyamah, a day for standing. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the one to basically decree all of this, and therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, man asdaqu min Allah haditha. So no one can say, well, what if Allah changes his mind? What if he decides not to bring Yawm al-Qiyamah? There is no doubt, there is no hesitation, there is no change of mind, there is no change of decree that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what He will determine. So there is no change, and no one can say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might actually say that. And anybody that says that is basically accusing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of being impulsive. And the Lord Almighty is not impulsive. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. There's nothing like unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is as-Sami' al-Basir. He is the all-seeing, and He all hearing and all seeing. فَمَا لَكُمْ فِي الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِئَتَيْنِ. Now this is an important shift right here, right after this little star right there. And of course, this star marks al-Hizb. So the number Hizb is 10, and we have 60 Hizb, 60 partitions. We talked about that in detail. But the little shift right there, فَمَا لَكُمْ فِي الْمُنَافِقِينَ, it wasn't a shift, and we're here, was here speaking about the munafiqeen, of course, and what really is the motive behind all the hypocrisy that they were living in. But then the shift right here was really because the Muslims were going into some dispute. How do we judge those groups? How do we judge the munafiqeen when their hearts have actually said, or at least their tongues have said the shahada, but their actions are showing otherwise? How do we relate with them? How do we understand the munafiqeen? And of course, we know the general hadith is that the Prophet ﷺ did not order that the Sahaba would kill the munafiqeen, even though he knew who was the one after dividing the ummah. He knew who the hypocrites were. The Prophet ﷺ knew them by name. He knew them by each and every single detail. So it wasn't foreign to him. It wasn't unknown to him. It wasn't anonymous to him. It was absolutely clear. But despite all that, when Umar ibn al-Khattab had said, well, why don't you just order me and order us to just kill them and end with all of this trouble that we're facing here and dealing with? But the Prophet ﷺ said a very important statement, which is, I would worry that people would say Muhammad is killing and slaying his friends. In other words, he did not want to put fear in those that wanted to embrace Islam and think that they would be in danger even if they were to embrace Islam. And of course, this was saddan lidhara'a. Imam Malik had said that this rule, saddan lidhara'a. Let me write that right down. That way we could memorize that. And this is called, let's put it right there, not on the Quran. Sadd al-dhara'i. And what sadd al-dhara'i simply means is that you're blocking the means to evil. So whatever leads to an evil or a bad consequence, basically as a Muslim and as the legislature of Islam, it's all about blocking whatever leads to evil and whatever leads to harm. We're basically closing the means to it. So if you think of anything in Islam, you think of any Sharia, or any ahkam sharia. So you would have number one, you've got the major sins, which basically are al-kaba'ir. You've got the major sins, and you've got as-sagha'ir. As-sagha'ir, which are the minor sins, maybe we could write that down. The minor sins are basically the sins. Let's get that out right there, and hopefully we can get more space. Oops, where'd it go? Okay, here we go. Maybe we can get more space. Here we go. All right. So the al-kaba'ir are the major sins. So all the minor sins would lead to major sins. So why are major sins, minor sins haram? Well, that's because they lead to the major sins. So it would be a lot easier and a lot more obvious to explain the major sins and show you how they're relating to harming either the deen or even the lives of the lives of the people within our society, or whether it's to harm the mental health, or whether it is to harm the family structure, or whether it is to harm the property and the property distribution, and of course the safety that people would have and security over their property. It's so obvious. But when it comes to minor sins, it could be a little more relative, where you might not be able to see the correlation between minor sins and major sins, which is why there's Sharia. So if I were to tell you the ayat, or at least the hadith, were ordering us for ghadd al-basar. The ayat and the hadith were ordering us to lower our gaze. Somebody might say, well, what does lowering the gaze have to do with anything? If I'm looking at anything, what does it do? How am I going to change my behavior simply because I looked at something? For many, if you're a believer, you would basically say, well, this is too obvious. I don't really need any more logical or any intellectual or any scientific studies to explain the correlation between the two. But of course, when we see the society right now being so contaminated with all these narratives, many times people are really getting lost to see the correlation. Before, even during the time, I'll give you an example. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, can you give me the permission to commit zina? I guess he just really wanted to commit zina. He just wanted that. So the Prophet ﷺ tells him, would you want that to happen to your mother, to your sister? In other words, would you want any of your mother, sister, your female relatives to engage in such an action? And he said, no. And he said, well, no one would want it to happen to their sisters and mothers. So that's the same thing. But during our times, if you were to ask somebody that is so indulged in kufr, so indulged in the contamination that even was not precedent even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that was an ummah that was also indulged in such behaviors. But you could say that we are so indulged in such contamination that even many times you can have a Muslim and you can bring that argument to them and they'll say, so what's wrong with it? And that's how far. So what's wrong with it? Why not? It's personal freedom, and the list goes on and on. That's how contaminated our community's mind is. The Muslim, and even, of course, if that's the Muslim, let alone the non-Muslims as well, because the communities have gone so deep in contamination, the heart contamination, the mental contamination, that right now it's so hard for them to see the correlation between the minor sins and the major sins. So that's why there's Sharia, in order to help us identify those boundaries, in order for us not to have a murky boundary and shades that are unidentifiable for us. So فَمَا لَكُمْ فِي الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِئَتَيْنِ وَاللَّهُ أَرْكَسَهُمْ بِمَا كَسَبُوا. We went in details yesterday, and we said that, of course, as a result of number one, is that their tongues were saying the shahada, but their behavior was basically giving us otherwise, led to the Muslimin, led to the Muslims actually going into argument and dispute whether and how we should deal with them, and how we should deal with these groups, whether we should treat them as Muslims or whether we should treat them as non-Muslims. What is the right way? What is the right way, and what is the right, of course, the right behavior in dealing with all of this? And of course, this becomes a political action. This is not talking about a personal thing. So this is not person to person, but this is a government here, which was basically resembling the Prophet ﷺ, a government, and of course, a community right there. And of course, resembling also the munafiqeen, were pretty much somewhat of what we could consider today as an organization, as a lobby, as an actual group that was there and behaving with certain agendas. So that's not a personal thing. But at the same time, it's important for us to see the correlation between the times then, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and the times even today, and how the times today and even the times during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, how we would see the similarities, between how people were the correlation between how people were acting then and how people are acting today. So في المنافقين فئتين, it was the Muslims that went into two groups, into two explanations, into two interpretations, or at least into two considerations. One had actually considered that they are Muslim because they said the Shahada, and the second one was giving, I want you to look at this one, التبرير. What is it, tabrir? Tabrir is the justification. So what does that mean? So some of them are saying, well, it's because we did this. It's because that maybe we should have done things differently. Maybe we're, and this is very common that many times we would see that we're just giving too many justifications and not recognizing that, no, there is, regardless of probably the things that we might have to change within our community, but there is an impact. There is an impact that the main thing that basically is that is resulting in such a wrong behavior is really their aqidah going wrong. The aqidah is really bringing in all the change in the behavior. So wallahu arkasahum bima kasabu. I would yesterday, as I was going over what I was saying, thought I didn't comment on this one. Wallahu arkasahum bima kasabu. And it's important to comment on it because somebody might say, let me put the wording first and explain it. And Allah brought them into a regression for what they had done. Someone might say, well, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is responsible for these people and basically the result that they went into, because it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that arkasahum. Now, here's one thing. There are two things here. This is important to explain, so please pay attention to this. So there are two things. Number one is that there is something called al-mashi'a al-kawniyya. Okay, al-mashi'a al-kawniyya. And there is al-mashi'a al-tashri'iyya. What does that mean? So did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, somebody might say, well, if it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that basically caused all of this, then why is it that we're holding them accountable if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was the one that made this happen? He's the one that got them into kufr, not them. Yes, certainly they did the wrong behavior, but it was Allah that actually put them in that. So this is al-mashi'a al-kawniyya. It's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose kufr for them. It's that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created certain things. Let me translate these two words. So al-mashi'a al-kawniyya would be unnatural. So we're speaking about unnatural, or we're speaking about a will that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in nature. And there is a will that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in legislature. So what does that mean? When you look at Mashi'a al-Kawniyya, there's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created in nature, in where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, created as part of nature in physics. Simple. You throw a ball, it basically, there's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in nature, which is there's gravity, the ball basically falls down. So this is a mashi'a. This is a will that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in nature. He doesn't change what created in nature unless it was a miracle. Unless it was a miracle. That's the only thing. So the changes in nature, you would basically cause, you would put in the effort, you would put in a certain effect. And of course, the result is really within nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already decreed. You put in fisq, the result is you're going to go in more fisq. You invested in khair, the result is you're going to go into salah. And it's simple as that. It's simple as exactly like the way that you would work out anything in physics, in nature. You invest in, you put yourself in an area that was basically contaminated with all this dirty stuff. Well, you're going to get sick. There's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decreed in nature. It's not going to change. It's not going to change because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that. And it's the same thing. You put yourself between or in an environment where they're all committing sin. The decree is it's going to have its effect on your heart. It's going to have its effect on your mind. Don't expect otherwise because you put yourself in that contaminated area. Unless there's going to be a miracle, that's going to be a different thing. Same thing. If you put yourself in a good nature, the result is going to bring you the good impact, the good influence, the good effect on you. You are constantly going to the masajid. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed, you constantly go to the masajid. قَلْبُكَ مُعَلَّقْ بِالْمَسَاجِد. Your heart is connected to the masjid, then the result is you're going to see the impact on your heart. You're going to see the impact on your spirit. You're going to see the impact on your behavior. That's the way it goes. What did you determine and what did you actually want the result to be is really what you contribute. So when you look at Wallahu arkasahum, it doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was the one that accepted this. It basically means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decreed something in nature, and basically that decree went in what they had invested, is basically what the result was going to be based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already decreed that such a behavior was going to lead to what? And that's the same thing. Al-mashi'a tashri'iyya, which basically legislating will or legislature in general, okay, and where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَرْضَى لِعِبَادِهِ الْكُفْرِ, that he does not decree and does not will and accept and is not content of kufr. And of course, if we're saying kufr, we're saying disbelief, we're also saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept and does not, and is never content of somebody committing a major sin or a minor sin. This is al-mashi'a tashri'iyya. So when we say illa ayyasha Allah, we're basically talking about il-mashi'a. We're speaking about the will. We're speaking about the decree. And of course, you make a mashi'a. You yourself would have a will, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, based on what you contribute, you will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created and laid out certain wills or certain decrees in nature, certain laws in nature that basically are going to be determined based on the contribution that you put in, and you will see the result going and heading towards that direction. So that's why when you look at this is not saying, well, do you really want to bring about hidayah to someone that basically had gone into a delusion? Well, the question in this context, if you were to take it out of it, then you're actually going to misunderstand it. Because absolutely I want to bring guidance to somebody that basically is in some deviation. Absolutely. But this is not what it's talking about. The context in this ayah was because they were giving the justification. They were giving basically, well, maybe because of this, they were trying to put in a number of different justifications, a number of different labelings. Well, let's just say they're muslimin and not munafiqeen. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, well, are you really going to change the reality of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had considered them as? If they're munafiqeen, well, that's what they are. You can't relabel and basically change the truth of the matter of what they are. The truth of the matter is that munafiqeen. But here's one thing, is that of course this was to speak about a general group. This was not to speak about somebody specific. All right, this is important. So we cannot say, well, this person right there is munafiq or a munafiqa. Therefore, hey, aturiduna an tahdu man adalla Allah? And you're like, well, wait a minute. How did you know that they were munafiq? Oh, their behavior is saying that. Well, in general, you cannot be specific on one specific person. And at the end, when you look at these ayat, this was actually speaking about in general, your duty right now is to bring about guidance to people. Your duty right now is to bring about, one, removing the misconceptions, and two, bringing in the hearts to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's important to recognize those areas that are basically causing let's call it causing the division and causing the delusion within the ummah. And especially, I would like to say, maybe because I have a personal relationship, but maybe with a lot of the boards in the masjid. Many times people would go to the masjid and they would just basically see a place and they don't recognize that there is a certain board, there's a certain area that is determining how the masjid is run. And the way that masajid are run, unfortunately, sometimes the ones that would have a say are not necessarily the ones that want the khair, Islam to the ummah, but are more, they're the ones that wanted basically to contribute in money, so they eventually become the ones to have the power to say exactly the way that you...
So that's where the politics kind of come from, you mean?
Where the politics goes. That's where
okay.
That's why I'm, it's really sad to say that that's one main reason why I basically left all of that and we did Gems of Light, because I'm sick and tired of all that politics. They took away our niyyah. They took away our what is the word that I could use? Our innocence. It's subhanAllah. So that's where the politics, all of it goes. It's really where you would see different groups just wanting to head towards, hey, I have the money and therefore I would have the say, and I have the money, therefore I would decide, since I contributed this much money, I would decide how much activities, how many activities are being put in, who's to be invited, what is to be said. And sometimes you'll see, even as a speaker, the masjid will have somebody to actually come and say and tell you, hey, we don't want you talking about this topic.
I've heard that.
This is real. They'll tell you, don't talk about this topic. We have certain people that are sensitive about it, etc. It's really the munafiqeen. Like, they don't want Islam to be the one that speaks for the Muslims and to determine the Muslims' behavior. They'll basically want a certain definition, a certain image, a certain Islam to be out there, because they don't want to feel guilty. They don't want to be recognized for what they're doing. They don't want the Quran to identify their hypocrisy. And this is really scary, because the Quran is speaking about that hypocrisy. It's like, no, the Quran was there. Whether you're practicing it or not, you have to let it speak. You have to let the Quran speak. And you have to let the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us what guidance means. It's not you that defines guidance, but it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that defines guidance. And what is happening right now is that وَمَا يُضْلِلَهُ فَلَنْ تَجِدَ لَهُ سَبِيلًا. Because at the end of the day, whoever engages in, remember, the major sin and the minor sin, whoever engages in all those different deviant behaviors, then you're not going to find any path to them. You're not going to find any path to them that would lead them to guidance, because all they're living in was really all that misguidance. So وَمَا يُضْلِلِ اللَّهُ, if basically they were living in that misguidance, then you're not going to be capable of taking them to the path of guidance. If they're yudlil, What is yudlid? Yudlid is fi'al mudara, basically means present tense. It's a verb that is basically showing constance, consistence, a constant behavior, a consistent behavior, a behavior where it's taking basically one path to another and basically leads to a certain destiny. A certain destiny, and where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but not only did they do that on a personal level, but no, it moved from a personal level to actually make it as an agenda within the community. No, what they want is farther than just giving them their spaces to engage in the kufr, no, or nifaq. No, they actually want to put in an effort. They will invest money. They will invest ideas. They will invest narratives. And right now, believe it or not, we actually have so many, I would call them nifaq and munafiq nonprofit organizations in the US. I would say about the US because that's where I was living. So for 30 years, I lived in the US, and I guess I could speak about that, but I don't know about the other countries, but I'm sure it has the same because it's the same in each and every single community. What they would want is that what is basically when you say what the shape, that this is what they would want. It's the intention. What they are seeking is really لو تكفرون كما كفر فتكونون سواء. What they want, their intention, the goal is that you would be embracing the same exact kufr, the same exact narrative, the same exact behavior that they are engaging in. That way, not only you won't be to them, you won't be superior. And here, this is not an issue of superior to mean some kind of a personal, what should I call it, in where, yes, it's a personal thing where I want to put you down and condescending. No. This is talking about il-izza, that many would not want there any izzah, any honor to be to in iman itself. So of course, what embodies iman? Well, basically mu'mineen. So that's why when you look at in Surah Al-Tawbah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had described the munafiqeen, what were they saying? Well, they were saying about the mu'mineen, that were basically in the Battle of Tabuk. They said, well, they're the ones that eat the most. They're the ones that basically, yes, they probably know more Quran than us, but they're the most that eat, and they're the ones that are really the cowards with amongst us and all of that. What they were really trying to display is not necessarily to speak about the people as persons, but what they were trying to mock is really iman itself, is really faith itself. So in this ayah, similarly, كَمَا كَفَرُوا فَتَكُونُونَ سَوَاء, what they were trying to do is really take out the honor from iman and give honor to kufr. Give honor to kufr. Give honor to disbelief. Take out all the honor from iman or honor from the mu'mineen that are embodying iman and giving it to kufr. So you would see right now, we've got so many nonprofit organizations where right now, a women's masjid, for example, and what they were really trying to display is really a new feminist and a new feminist agenda, where it basically puts in the two contradictions, feminism and Islam together. And what you're really saying, I'm not saying each and every single group of women trying to do some women and all women activity is necessarily doing that, because I think it's important that we would have women's activity where it's basically dedicated to women. Basically, the women are away from the different fitan and all of that. And why not? Why do we have to always think that we have to be within those organizations where, we want to always, object, where's the women group and where's the women voice and all of that? But at the end of the day, is that what is, at least as a woman, and what I had seen a lot of women actually do, is basically bring in and adopt a lot of the feminist narrative, or a lot of the nifaq narrative, or a lot of the narratives that are really happening on, let's call it, on the different, or nationwide, or on the different platforms in the West, for example. At least we're going to talk about the West, since I know that community better than I probably know what's happening in the Middle East, maybe. So I can just speak for that. So here, فَتَكُونُونَ سَوَاء is really just wanting to blend Islam with kufr, and you cannot have that. Because the second you blend Islam with kufr, the second you blend Islam with nifaq, what you're going to end up with is really a contaminated aqidah, a contaminated behavior. So what you really need to do is really make sure that you have a pure Islamic aqidah, a pure Islamic definition, a pure Islamic practice, and founded based on that, and not based on an adopted definition from feminism or from different philosophers or whatever it is, and actually call it, well, it's basically, this is what they'll present it as. They'll say it's basically trying to present Islam in a modern, moderate way. Well, what you had actually done was not presented in a moderate, modern way. You had actually taken Islam out, and you had presented kufr, and you had given kufr an Islamic halal label. But the truth of the matter, it is not containing Islam, but it's containing kufr. But the label is basically just saying halal. It doesn't make it halal, and it doesn't make it Islam, simply because you stamped on it, La ilaha illallah. فَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا مِنْهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءَ. So in that situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, how do I deal with these groups if I'm recognizing that there is that mixture, that contamination of nifaq? What do I do with it? How do I relate to it? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't take them as the leaders. Don't take them as the ones that would give you the decisions. Don't take them as the ones to basically you would take as role models until you hajiru fi sabilillah, until they would really put in one. The word hijrah, we mentioned, in hijrah can mean to basically depart something, to leave something, to abandon something. So yuhajiru fi sabilillah would actually here to make hijrah for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But la hijrata ba'da al-fath. There's no hijrah after the conquer of Mecca, which is 8th year hijrah. So this is not talking about migrating from Medina, from Mecca to Medina. But although the context at the time, yes, but this is in general, and because al-ibra bi'umum al-lafzi la bi khusus al-sabab. Let's write that down. This is really important. What is al-ibra bi'umum al-lafz? I want to write that down. This is important. Al-ibra, it's not accepting. Where is it? Okay, something's wrong. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'm not sure why it's not accepting that. I would. Okay, it doesn't want to. So
yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'll do this one. I'll do it this with it. Al-ibra. I want you to look at this one. Al-ibra bi'umum al-lafzi la bi khusus al-sabab. Okay, what does that mean? So yes, although this ayah was revealed, oh, let me put it right here. All right, although this ayah, here we go, we can find this little spot. Although this ayah was revealed during the time where it was talking about hijrah to mean hijrah from Mecca to Medina, but it is not necessarily this particular incident or that particular context that we're going to use this ayah for, but it is bi'umum al-lafz, in the generalized statement, in where hatta yuhajiru fi sabilillah, and not until, number one, they abandon disbelief, abandon major sin, abandon at least the idea of minor sin and not necessarily the practice. Why not? Shouldn't we basically also abandon them if they practice minor sin? Well, you also practice minor sin. Each and every single one of us does. So in that situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, well, we're talking about yuhajiru in at least in their vision, in their practice, and as a way of life. So that's the only time that you're going to take them as friends, or you're going to take them, yuhajiru fi sabilillah. That's the only time that you're going to take them as leaders, not until they recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically the one that they would turn to for in definition, they would turn to in action, and they would turn to in identifying, of course, their destination. فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا, of course, then if that situation happens in where they would, the word tawalla, they would reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would reject basically to take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the one that determines for them, etc. All of that, فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا, if they turn away, so this is a general statement, فَخُذُوهُم. So here, فَخُذُوهُم doesn't mean take them, it simply means that you're putting an effort, and this effort is basically in even going into combat wherever you may find them. وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا مِنْهُمْ وَلِيًّا وَلَا نَصِيرًا. So in that situation, you're not going to take them not as a wali, and certainly not as the ones to give you victory. So in other words, you're not going to say, well, I'd like you to donate this much. Well, if they're not the ones that are actually supporting all this, why are you asking them to contribute? Why are they asking them to be the ones to be in the decision making? Why are you taking them as the ones to give you advice? There are certain people that you just should not put within your orbit. You just have to identify those areas. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ, should we kill each and every single? No. There are certain groups, we talked about it, we're not going to go in detail. So إِلَّا الَّذِينَ يَصِلُونَ إِلَى قَوْمٍ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ مِيثَاقٌ. There are certain groups in where we talked about al-musta'min, we talked about al-mu'ahid, and we also talked about al-dhimmi. These three different people, and we said that if the Islamic government basically has a certain agreement with these people, and they're basically not in belief, and we already know they're not believers, so at the end, if there's basically an agreement, then we would basically keep them at peace. We would not fight them at all, and we would just be, remember, we have to be alert. We have to be alert. أَوْ جَاءُوكُمْ حَصِرَتْ صُدُورُهُمْ أَن يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ أَوْ يُقَاتِلُوا قَوْمَهُمْ. And you've got other groups that basically are still carrying a lot of animosity, and of course, they're just at that moment, I guess, not having the power to basically display their head, at least in public or in action in combat. Then in that situation, we basically would we would look at their behavior. If they're basically deciding not to be in combat, they're being at peace. فَلَمْ يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ, they're not being combatants, they're not fighting us right now. And of course, they basically had displayed peace, they displayed tolerance, they displayed acceptance to the Muslims. Then in that situation, فَمَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ سَبِيلًا. In that situation, what you have to do is basically embrace the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not allow you to oppress, abuse, or certainly engage in any form of aggression. سَتَجِدُونَ آخَرِينَ يُرِيدُونَ أَن يَأْمَنُوكُمْ. You've got others, we already know. And this is important to talk about, which is the idea of being a pacifist, okay? What is a pacifist? So a pacifist basically is right now going into the Muslim community, and where we have a lot of Muslims right now, of course, because of the labeling of terror and all of that. So right now you have some Muslims that are afraid to speak in any form of combat. So they'll basically just be pacifists, and this is becoming very common in where many Muslims would think, well, the best way and the only way that I have to talk about this is to be a pacifist and not display whatsoever any form of speaking about Muslim power. So this is actually against Islam, because the Quran itself had actually considered that engaging in battle, okay, maybe the time right now that we're in is basically not giving us let me call it the authority, the power to engage in any of that sort. In fact, right now, what we're really facing is really nothing but defeat after defeat and weakness after weakness. But at the end of the day, as an idea, even if you cannot or you do not have the power to say the truth, it does not give you the justification to say al-Badri. Say it again. Even if you don't have the power to say the truth, that does not give you the justification to say falsehood. The truth is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had regarded that Muslims are supposed to seek the different means to having power, whether we're speaking about political power, combat and military power, educational, scientific, and science, whatever it is, even if it's going to the moon, or right now they're looking to go to Mars. Okay, so we need Muslims to basically contribute and work towards bringing in Muslim power. So to actually think that, oh, we're supposed to be pacifist, well, no group and no community is a pacifist. America is not, certainly, and that's why they have, of course, all this power, and neither is Russia and neither is China. Not a single country does not have an army except the Vatican. But the Vatican, well, that's because it's right in the middle of Rome, or right in the middle of Italy. So the Vatican has all the Western power right now, really, in defense and in support of that. So they don't need to have an army. It's just a little city anyways. But for Islam, no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was basically straightforward in the ayat, was right there telling us that no, what we need to seek is basically to bring about justice to the ummah. فَإِن لَمْ يَعْتَزِلُوكُمْ, right straightforward, those groups that would basically يُرِدُونَ أَن يَأْمَنُوكُمْ, they just want to seek the security from your end, and of course the security from their own group's end. But whenever they would find the moments at their interest in supporting their goals, basically, they would go back to it, and of course they would just seek seize the moment in order to find the moment to basically fight the ummah. These people, if they did not basically leave kufr, they did not leave, at least not kufr, but sorry, let me correct that. They did not leave harming you. And وَيُلْقُوا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامَ, and they did not basically allow you to live in peace. وَيَكُفُّوا أَيْدِيَهُمْ, and they did not stop attacking you and harming you. So what is that? A definition? These three areas. This is basically leading to the same exact wording, which is, well, they're not in combat. If they're in combat, then in that situation, you two are not supposed to be just waiting to peacefully stop their combat, but you have to engage in combat yourself, because that's the only way to stop the harm. But if you think, and this is very common, I would say a lot of women especially, I don't see as many men speaking in this language as much as I see women and sisters actually speaking in this language and speaking about we have to always be peaceful, etc. That's very nice in a women's world, sister, but in a man's world, the world is pretty ugly. The world only recognizes those that are in power. To think that when somebody is coming at you to basically harm you, to basically attack you, to basically kill you, and you're right there thinking that if I were to just say kind words, that they will stop, or maybe I could change what isn't within their heart. Sorry, but that's too childish. The truth of the matter is that these people have become so engaged in slaying, killing, in combat, that they only know one language, the language of power. The language of power, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically tells you right there that no, at the end, you have to engage in combat to defend yourself, to basically give yourself the power, and to make sure that others are not humiliating your society, humiliating your deen. You have to be a strong believer. A strong believer, whether in faith or whether in action or whether in politics or whether in combat. You have to be a strong person. And what we're dealing with today is because we are defeated politically, defeated militarily, we're basically right there, left and right, just asking, please, UN, tell Israel to stop. Please, America, stop funding Israel. But if there was a power to say, oh, right, Israel, we're the ones that are going to tell you to stop, and we know how to do it. That's the language that would basically be the language that Netanyahu and, of course, the likes would understand. All right, now that I'm on my YouTube channel and even probably my Facebook is probably going to be locked down. We'll see the truth, even if, you know, we might say it in a way where it doesn't straightforward mean one thing, but we'll say at least, and hoping that the mu'mineen, inshallah, would understand what we're trying to get to. وَأُولَٰئِكُمْ جَعَلْنَا لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانًا مُبِينًا. Those are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, once you basically have the power to overcome them, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you سُلْطَانًا مُبِينًا. عليهم سُلْطَانًا مُبِينًا. What is a sultan? A sultan is power. It's not the sultan, the guy that's sitting on a, sitting on some kind of couch and with this little gem on his forehead and the turban. This is not the sultan, okay? This is not the sultan. The sultan is basically the power.
It's not those Turkish series, right?
Exactly. It's not any Ertugrul stuff. And no. The sultan is the power, all right? And of course, the sultan, the reason why they were called sultan, the Turkish series sultan, is really because they were embodying power. It's true that they used to dress like that. I guess that was their fashion. But it wasn't just the sultan dressed like that. It was everybody else that was dressed like that too. Everybody used to dress that way anyways. All right. But you only saw the sultan dressed like that because they had portraits or at least paintings of these people to basically display power, to display honor, whatever it is. So you basically thought only the sultan was dressed like that. No, everybody was dressed like that. Even the sultan himself, he was dressed like everyone else. He wasn't wearing something, I guess, funny, and everyone else is dressed differently. No, everyone was dressed. Okay. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ أَن يَقْتُلَ مُؤْمِنًا إِلَّا خَطَأً. We went in details in regards to this ayah, and we said, well, since we're speaking about the munafiqeen, it can be possible. Let me tell you the story behind this one. Maybe I could take you to the hadith in order for you to see it. This one's rather interesting, and it really made me sad, to be honest, the story. Maybe I can find it for you in order for you to actually see the whole, okay, here we go. I found it. All right. So I'm going to show you, hold on. Well, what are we going to do? Here we go. So what am I sharing here? I'm going to show you what I'm sharing. Okay. Let me take this one right there. Okay. So this is a tahrir with tanweer for Tahir ibn Ashur. Tahir ibn Ashur, you could say he died so not very long time ago. I would think that this is probably 1979 or something. I don't know exactly what date it is, but 1339 Hijriya. Okay. Tahir ibn Ashur was a Tunisian scholar, but I went to his tafsir simply because when I was doing tafsir al-Qurtubi, it wasn't really going into the details that were doing me, I guess, the favor in what I really wanted to get out of the juice of the Sahih. So the story, he said, al-Tabari and al-Wahidi. Now, mind you, al-Tabari, of course, has tafsir al-Tabari. I didn't go to it, even though I can actually find it in here. I can find it in here, but I wanted to actually go for Tahir ibn Ashur. Okay. So he actually said al-Tabari and al-Wahidi. Now, has a book. It's in one volume. الطبري has a book, almost 11 volumes in Tafsir al-Tabari, but al-Wahidi both actually do one thing, which basically is called the Tafsir bil-Ma'thur. And what that means is that they're doing tafsir, but not based on the words and the, let's say, the grammar in Arabic, all of those details. No, they would basically look at the different narrations. And they had said that the reason for this revelation, for the ayah that we were doing, let's look at it again. The ayah that we were doing, which is right there. So we're looking at Surah Nisa, ayah number 92, at least in the first segment of it, that the reason for it was the following. Let's look at the story. So Aysha ibn Abi Rabi'a al-Makhzumi, he basically became Muslim and he migrated to Medina before even the Prophet ﷺ had migrated to Medina himself. And of course, Ayyash was basically the half brother to Abu Jahl, from his mom's side at least. And then Abu Jahl and al-Harith ibn Hisham, they Abu Jahl and his brother al-Harith Abu Hisham and al-Harith ibn Zayd, they all three, they basically go to Medina, and they come to Medina and they say, hey, your mom, she's really in need for you. And she even made an oath that she would not sit under any shade until she would see you. Why don't you just come back with us? And you could that way have your mom see you, and then you can come back to Medina. And they promised him, so they promised him basically from Allah, they made an oath that they would not basically somehow, force him to become a kafir, and that they would basically embrace his choices, basically accept his choices. Indeed, he believed them and he went out with them. Yet once they actually had left the borders of Medina, they tied him up and then they took him back to Mecca. And they said, we're not going to untie you until you would go into kufr and disbelief in what you had believed in. Who was the one that was torturing him? It was al-Harith ibn Zayd. Al-Harith ibn Zayd, he was basically right there. He was the one that was torturing him, flogging him, and certainly doing all the nasty tortures on him. So he told Ayyash, Ayyash, who's basically Aysha ibn Abi Rabi'a, he basically told al-Harith, by Allah, I will not see you in any time, find you alone, but I will kill you. I'm going to kill you. In other words, I'm going to kill you one day. And he stayed in Mecca until the day of al-Fath. Who? That was al-Harith ibn Zayd. And then one day, he basically saw al-Harith ibn Zayd. What happened? Al-Harith had actually become Muslim. But Ayyash, who's this guy right there, Aysha ibn Abi Rabi'a, didn't know that he had become Muslim. And he remembered all the torture that he had caused onto him. So what did he do? Ayyash basically hit him and killed him. That's when, of course, he was told he had actually become Muslim. Of course, he was really sad about it because he didn't really know that that had happened. And of course, just imagine, it's like, oh no, what did I just do? It's really, I don't know. I find it a really sad story because I don't think there's a happier moment for me than seeing a person do their shahada. There's no happier moment. It's to me, it just is the happiest moment when you see that display right there. What the shahada resembles is that a person had just passed the sirat and actually set the first foot near Jannah. That's what it means. It's just look at it right there. They just passed the sirat and they just set their first foot into Jannah. There's nothing more beautiful, nothing more peaceful, and nothing more beloved unto me more than seeing somebody say shahada. So to actually see that the person that tortured me once for my shahada and for basically for my Islam had right now become Muslim, that I killed them, Ya Allah, I'm sure he was in so much anger and so much guilt. The other Ibn Atiyah, so Ibn Atiyah has another tafsir, which is Ibn Atiyah, it's really sad. He's from Al-Andalus. He basically has a tafsir. It's also a big tafsir and can be found right there. You could actually see it here. You'll find it, inshallah. So it's really easy to go to. All right. So he actually narrated that the reason for this ayah was really because Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. So what happened was Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman was originally from Mecca, but his father migrated from Mecca to Medina because he had killed somebody. Okay, he had killed somebody. So then, in order to not have his, and that was before Islam. So in order not to have his family retaliate against him, he basically sought, I guess, to find the nearest or maybe the farthest place to be safe in, which is Medina. When Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman had become Muslim along with his father, of course, during the time when the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca, during the battle of Uhud, I can't remember if it's Uhud or Badr. Oh, here we go. It actually says Uhud. All right. In Uhud, by mistake, the Muslim army had killed Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman's father by mistake. So the Prophet ﷺ, of course, just imagine, it's like, oh, was that even the non-Muslims that killed my father? It was actually the Muslims themselves. It was by mistake. So the Prophet ﷺ had actually given the diya, the diya to Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, but Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman donated the whole diya, even though he was actually in need for it. Anyhow, so وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً. So in that situation, when we went into details last time in terms of the different kinds of qatl, or if we were to talk about killing, and we went in details, and we said there's al-qatl al-khata and there's al-qatl al-khata, and we said that there's also al-qatl al-amd or shibh al-amd. And we said the differentiation between qatl al-amd is basically intentional killing. And we said intentional killing would basically mean that the person had the intention and the tool that would result in the crime of killing. In qatl al-khata would be that a person didn't have the intention to kill, even though the tool was actually a killing tool. Let's give an example. Let's say you were hunting, okay, and you wanted to, I guess, shoot a deer. You shoot, but then instead of shooting the deer, it basically shoots your own friend. The tool was a killing tool, but you didn't intend to kill your friend. That would be really hard. Your own friend, you kill him by mistake. Oh, I had my grandfather's cousin, all right, his father, he himself actually, he was reversing the car, and in order to park the car, what he did was he let his friend go behind the car and basically tell him how far to reverse the car to park the car right. And instead of reversing the car right, he seems like he had put his foot on a fast, I guess, the gas and also the reverse together. So it really, let me correct that, not the gas and the reverse together, but it seems like it slammed on the gas to reverse the car fast, and it basically squeezed his dearest friend.
Ya Allah.
Ya Allah, that was, and forever he was actually he was actually in trauma because of that forever. He would never forget it, and forever he would always just choose not to engage with people. He wanted to also, just, I guess, go over it. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep such things. Ya Allah, it can happen to any of us. It can happen. Ya Allah, you're so many different stories can actually happen without you having the intention. Ya Allah, I don't know. I guess I'm so emotional about it. I could never imagine such a thing actually happening whatsoever, even by mistake. I would never want such a thing to happen. All right. So the other thing, of course, we talked about al-qatl al-khata, and we said if there's al-qatl al-khata, we did talk about different types of diya. So let's put it right there in where, well, first of all, let's put in, we said intentional killing. That actually requires al-qasas, which means basically capital punishment, which basically capital punishment actually means the person is executed. Simple. Okay. But of course, they don't have to be executed because the family, the victim's family, would be the one to say whether they would like a capital punishment or not, or whether they would like to take the diya instead. The diya is basically the price of 100 camels, but we're not talking about just a general thing, because there's a jada'a, there's a laboon, and they're the different kinds of basically camels, and of course different kinds of different basically prices. So the prices do vary, and of course when we're talking about also the prices right now and the inflation, the prices do definitely bring about a change. But we're here giving a rough estimation, $100,000 or probably $150,000 or maybe even more. So depending on the inflation and all of that, that would actually determine the price for that diya. Okay, وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ. Basically, that's the other part. Oh, let me actually stick to al-amd first rather than me jumping. Okay, hold on. So for al-amd, for an intentional, we said the choices are il-qasas, basically capital punishment, or id-diya, or of course id-diya, or basically to forgive. They can choose to forgive. So basically al-afu, they can choose to forgive. Now, the other one is basically, let's see, the other one is basically il-khata, by mistake. They can definitely, number one, there is il-kafara. There's no running away from il-kafara. There's no running away, which is fasting 2 months in a row. If you skip out a day, you're going to have to restart. Il-kafara, there's no way. Now, the second, and scholars had differences of opinions on what if the person that was killed was not Muslim. They had differences of opinions. Number two, the kafara, diya. Okay, we're talking about a diya in case of killing by mistake. Okay, unintentional killing. A diya would be different than the diya that was for the intentional killing, because a diya in this situation, because it's by khata, by mistake, it would be of yes, it's 100 camels, but the price is different. So instead of having 20 laboon and 20 jada, what does that mean? What is a laboon? I know the word sounds like a name like I could name my daughter in. Okay, but laboon, laboon or jada, those are basically a camel. The price of a camel that is pregnant is basically more than the price of a camel that's not pregnant. The price of a camel that is a year is different than the price of a camel that is 2 and 3 years old, and etc. Okay, so then we're looking at the prices are going to be, the diya is the general price is going to be less, because we're actually changing the description of what really the 100 camels consist of. Okay, this is important. So the 100 camels for the intentional killing is going to be consisting of a certain types of a description and certain types of prices, But for the diya in terms of unintentional killing, we're also going to change the numbering of different types of camels. So that's, I'm not going to go into details of all of that because you all, I'm sure not me and none of us actually has any information, not on the pricing of camels and not even the types of camels and all of that. So I have no information and therefore I didn't want to go in details. Just keep that in mind. Okay. The other thing is that the diya in the situation where it is by mistake, it can be paid in one payment or it can be paid throughout 3 years in installments, which actually makes it easier. The intentional killing, diya is to be paid by the person directly. You caused the crime, your family is not going to pay the price for it. Diya al-khata, that was not intentional. So the family is going to be in aqila, basically is going to support you in giving the compensation for a mistake that you had done. Okay, so this is basically to clarify it. In kafara, I would like to mention here, yes, it's fasting 2 months in a row, but that's because we don't have slaves today. Does that mean we have to bring slaves in order to apply the ayah? No, because the whole reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had actually regarded as freeing slaves as a good act, as in a compensation for different sins committed, is really because the main intention behind all of this is in order to end slavery. So don't bring it back. No, thank you. وَدِيَةٌ مُسَلَّمَةٌ إِلَى أَهْلِهِ. Diya musallama. And of course, there's the point right there. Diya musallama. It's supposed to be a diya that is not muslima, musallama. Okay, the diya, basically the blood money, that is musallama, means that you would deposit it, you would give it. Who? To the person, the victim's family, unless they wish to donate or unless they wish to forgive. That's a different story. So here, yasaddaqu, not to mean donate per se, but yasaddaqu here is to actually mean to forgive, is to actually mean to let go of their own right. So they basically decided that we're okay and we would like to actually, in that situation, decided to yasaddaqu, to forgive. So that would be their sadaqah, which actually means forgiving somebody is a form of sadaqah. So if you had harmed me in any way, but I said, it's okay, I forgive you, that's a sadaqah. فإن كان من قوم عدو لكم وهو مؤمن فتحرير رقبة. I want you to look at this one. This one's a little different. If the person that was killed, of course, who was killed? Now we're talking about a person that is adu, that's an enemy. This is not a Muslim, okay? This is not a Muslim. This is a Muslim killing a non-Muslim. So what do we do? So then it says, فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنٍ. Then what you need to do is free a believing slave, just like free a believing slave here. Why believing? Can't we just free any slave? Does he have to be a believing person? Yes, because right there you cause the death of a person. What you want to bring revival to is basically a believer. So what do we do? In that situation, do we actually give a diya to the non-Muslim victims? Differences of opinions between scholars. Pay attention to this one. Why? They had differences of opinions because they said, are we really going to be paying the non-Muslims here? Are we going to be giving them the money on behalf of a killing by mistake? It's a crime, yes, but the scholars that regarded that this is a crime against a person, this has nothing to do with their faith. They are the ones that regarded that, yes, you would still pay diya because this is an assault against a person, regardless of their faith. This is an assault against a person, and therefore you have to compensate them for the assault that you had committed. The other scholars, they regarded that why are we here giving money to the non-Muslims that are here mentioned as adu. This is not any non-Muslim, but this is not speaking about any non-Muslim that is peaceful here. This is actually talking about a person that is fighting us, that is a combatant group. So therefore, the other scholars said, no, if this is a adu, then in that situation, this ayah basically says then that mu'min, that person, the believer, in that situation, what they're supposed to be doing is just freeing a slave. And they had differences of opinions. Should they fast? Should they not fast? That is the believer, of course. All right. Should they fast or not fast? But at the end, they went into dispute because some scholars, they said, if you would give them money, then you're basically empowering them against us. But the other scholars, they said, you're not giving money to the combatants. You're giving money to the victim's family. This has nothing to do with that. وإن كان من قوم بينكم وبينهم ميثاق فدية مسلمة إلى أهله. So this is now the victim is not Muslim.
I'm a little confused. I'm sorry.
Let me do it again. I'll explain it.
Oh, no. Can I just ask a question? Because when there's jihad anyway,
That's different. We're not talking about jihad, Noura. We're not talking about jihad.
Okay. So you're talking about
civilians.
Explain the enemies.
Okay. Fair enough. So we're talking about civilians together. They're not combatants. If it's a combat, that's a different story. If we're right there in the field of war, that's a different story. But here we're not combats. We're basically just civilians. We were in the market. We got into a fight with this person who was basically coming in, I guess, to sell or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden go into dispute. And then this believer man, he basically, because of a dispute, maybe because, I don't know, a dispute over the price or whatever it is, you know, how guys would fight with each other over the silliest things, unlike ladies. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So in that situation, we're talking about civilians together here. We're not talking about combatants. Okay. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
And what did the majority of the scholars say about that?
Majority of the scholars, they actually regarded that that the diya is to be paid.
Okay.
Because
okay.
It's kind of like saying that this is a civilian. This is not a combatant. All right. This is a civilian.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Just like
this is a civilian. This is not a combatant. And yes, he comes from let's call it from the land, or at least the group of those that are combatants. But this is a civilian. This is not a person that is fighting us. This happens to be just a person that comes from that community but is not fighting us. But this was more of a civil dispute, or maybe just a person-to-person dispute. This wasn't a government thing. All right, let's go and continue. وَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمٍ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ مِيثَاقٌ. Now we're going to a different type of person. The person that we are in that basically is the victim, and basically the Muslim got into dispute with somebody that is considered that they were either musta'man, or they were either, remember, al-mu'ahad and al-musta'man, or dhimmi. Okay, those, let's write it down again. Okay, now it doesn't want to write down. What's going on? Okay, here we go. Okay, now we're talking about people that we have certain agreements with. Who are they? So you got one, there's al-musta'man, or al-musta'min, really, because we gave it to him. And there's al-mu'ahid, and there is a dhimmi. Okay, so who's al-musta'min? We basically talked about people that would basically be granted security. They're coming in with a visa. Al-mu'ahid, there's a certain treaty between us and their government. And dhimmi is basically the non-Muslim that is living within the Muslim community. They're dhimmi. They're basically residents within the Muslim community. Okay, they're not coming from a different country. Okay, bainahum mithaq. So here we go. We've got a certain agreement between us and them. Then in that situation, the victim would basically here be one of these people. He's either musta'min, mu'ahad, or dhimmi. So in that situation, when we're speaking about al-adu, that would be musta'min and al-mu'ahad. But al-mithaq would be dhimmi. So in that situation, we've got a convent, we've got an agreement, fadiyatun musallamatun ila ahlihi. This is really clear in where they would basically have the right to get the blood money. Diyatun musallamatun. Is it equivalent? Here's the question. Is it exactly like the diya that is in the expensive diya, like the diya that you would pay for intentional killing? Or is it the cheaper kind of diya that you would pay for al-khata, for the mistake? The cheaper kind of diya, an installment. So we're looking at different money here. All right. So here it says fadiyatun musallamatun ila ahli. It would be given to his family, who we're talking about a dhimmi. They have rights too. So scholars had differences of opinions on whether the diya is the expensive one, or whether the cheaper one, or even the 1/3 or 2/3 of the cheaper one. So they had differences of opinions. I'll make it stories. Tahriru raqabatin mu'mina, and plus you would basically have to free a slave. If you cannot find a slave, a believing slave to free, then in that situation, you would have to fast 2 months in a row, mutatabi'ain. فَصِيَامُ 2 months in a row. What kind of a month? A lunar month. تَوْبَةً مِنَ اللَّهِ. Why fasting? It's not like the victim is going to get anything out of this. It's basically because killing a human being, whether that person is Muslim or not Muslim, we're not talking about combat here. That's a different story. Whether the person is Muslim or not Muslim, even if it's a dhimmi, musta'min, mu'ahid, etc. All of those, just killing a person is going to have its impact on your heart. So, in order to remove this type of contamination from your heart, you have to fast these 2 months. You have to learn how to control your anger, learn how to control yourself from basically going as far as probably slaying a person. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, you've got some work to do. You didn't go that far, but because you had gone far in not controlling yourself. Even if it's an non-Muslim, a human being's life is sacred. You should not whatsoever go that far. So even if it's a non-Muslim that you had killed, you have to do shahrayni mutatabi'ain. You have to fast. Why? Because here, this is bainakum wa bainahum mithaq. This is a non-Muslim right there. But because human life is sacred, you have to do tawbatan min Allah. You have to do a repentance. You have to engage in the self-purification in order to get all of what your behavior had resulted in your heart. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. And the Lord Almighty is all-knowing and all-wise. Why? Because Alim, the impact, and He knows all very well, all the impact, killing, even if it was by mistake, the impact it has on your heart. So therefore, when He would rule a certain ruling, the Lord Almighty is basically all-wise. وَمَنْ يَقْتُلْ مُؤْمِنًا مُتَعَمِّدًا فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمُ خَالِدًا فِيهَا وَغَضِبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَلَعَنَهُ وَأَعَدَّ لَهُ عَذَابًا عَظِيمًا. Yet, whoever kills a believer with the intention of killing, deliberate and purposely killing the person, فَجَزَاؤُهُ, then their basically punishment would be Jahannam, where they would stay in it forever. وَغَضِبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ, and the Lord Almighty would be basically angry at them, and they would be cursed, and the Lord Almighty would prepare for them a torment that is a grave torment, or at least عذابا عظيما, painful punishment. Now, this is extremely scary. This is extremely scary because the scholars actually went in differences of opinions on how to understand this ayah. Why? Because they said, if this is a sin, that means based on this ayah, there's no forgiveness. That means they're doomed in hellfire and there's no forgiveness and that's it. And therefore, there's no tawbah. And I want you to look at, I want you to look at this one right there. We'll do it fast, inshallah. Okay, let's say. So yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we just saw this ayah, but then there's another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Muslim, of course, Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhuma, because Jabir and Abdullah, his father, were both Muslim, Jabir and Abdullah. Okay, inna dima'akum wa amwalakum haramun alaykum. Your blood, that is a metaphor to mean your life, and your wealth, your property, is all basically sacred, and therefore you cannot whatsoever trespass or transgress somebody's rights. And it is exactly as sacred as your day today, that is the day of Arafah. في شهركم هذا, as the month of Hajj, and in this sacred place. In other words, people's sanctity, the human life sanctity, and even their property is as sanctuary as Mecca, as the Kaaba, as basically the place itself. So you cannot think that, oh, the sanctuary piece is really just Mecca, but then you would basically give yourself that it's okay for me to go and somehow steal somebody's wealth. Now, let's say the ayah in Surah Al-Furqan, basically, was it 300 and what did we say? 374? Is that what we said? Let's go to that ayah and actually see it, right? If it allows me to. Oh, it doesn't. Okay, it was 374. I want you to see it right there. So what happened is that, look at this ayah right there, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Ibadur Rahman. Ibadur Rahman, the servants of Rahman, they would walk on earth in gentleness. And when the Jahilin, or those that basically are engaged in the principles of not the principles of the Lord Almighty, basically Jahiliyyah, they would respond, the mu'mineen would respond to them in peace. And those that would stay to their Lord Almighty throughout the night, they would be in prostration and even in qiyam, standing. And they would say, "O Lord Almighty," they would make the invocation, "keep hellfire away from us, for the hellfire, the torments of hellfire are extremely long. It is sa'at mustaqarra wa muqama. It is definitely an evil place to be in, an evil place to basically stay in forever." And those that would spend without overspending, in other words, moderate spending, and they did not live in stingy lifestyle, and they were in moderation, and they would not invoke other than the Lord Almighty, and they would not kill the soul that the Lord Almighty had forbid in killing, but in right. That is in something that they have the right to kill for. وَلَا يَزْنُونَ, and they do not commit zina. And whoever does such an act, basically, they will be basically at sin, where the torments on Judgment Day would be multiplied, and they would dwell in it in basically humility, except those that had repented and believed and done righteous. Those are the ones that the Lord Almighty would replace all their sins into good deeds. And the Lord Almighty is all forgiving and all merciful. Now, I want you to look at this ayah. Let me tell you another story that's even, I would say, more confusing. Abdullah ibn Abbas was asked, does the person that repented from killing somebody, is their repentance accepted or not? So a man comes in, the first man, he said no. The person that killed somebody in a deliberate action in an innocent life, even if they were to repent, their sin is not accepted. The second time, a man comes to Abdullah ibn Abbas and says, does the person that repent from killing somebody, is their repentance accepted? And he says yes. Now the scholars actually went not because of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, but really because of this ayah right there. Because of this ayah and the ayah that we read earlier, and that was going to be 103, in where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here we go, in where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically tells us right there, in where وَمَا يَقْتُلْ مُؤْمِنًا مُتَعَمِّدًا فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمُ. You kill somebody basically on purpose, then in that situation, this is going to be the result. So the scholars had differences of opinions on how to understand the ayat, whether there is, I was actually wanting to show you, well, you should have told me that I wasn't showing the ayat on that page. All right, that's okay. So they basically had differences of opinions on whether the repentance is accepted or not. So because of this hadith as well, that the man that killed 99 people, we know the story, and then eventually it basically the Prophet ﷺ comments on it and he says, وَمَن يَحُولُ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ التَّوْبَةِ. Who's the one that's going to basically bring any barrier between him and tawbah? Basically, the person killed 99 people, but then still his repentance was accepted. So in that situation, because of the dispute, because of the differences of opinions between scholars in that regards, the majority, they had explained the way Abdullah ibn Abbas had related to whether the tawbah is accepted, is that this is not necessarily that Abdullah ibn Abbas is changing the ruling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but this is basically him. He said, the first man, when I said the repentance is not accepted, is not because the repentance is not accepted, but it was really to reprimand the man because it seemed like he was full of anger and ready to commit a crime. So I wanted to reprimand him and tell him that, no, you would not get your tawbah accepted. So does that mean it's okay that we change the ruling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to reprimand people? No. It's not that he changed the ruling. It's that the circumstance he was saying, well, if you're before, he hasn't yet committed the crime. So he's reprimanding him based on the ayah. Tell him, well, you're going to commit the crime. He's saying that with his farasa, he's seeing that this person is ready to say, you're not going to get accepted, because if you are going with the intention to kill and think you can get away with it, then in that situation, you got to understand you can never, and you may never get your tawbah accepted. That was basically the context. Number two, the other guy that came in, he came in with remorse, with regret on his face, in where he was clearly sentenced for a crime that he had committed, and he was ready to repent. In other words, it already happened. So that's why when you look at, is there a tawbah for somebody that killed somebody? Certainly, there is tawbah. A crime, a sin, does not get you out of Islam. A crime basically has a certain punishment. It does not get you out of the fold of Islam. I forgot to mention, I did mention it before, the person that basically killed somebody, let's say a person killed someone in order to get their, I don't know, life insurance or get the money and the inheritance after them, and I guess anticipate, it's like, okay, they're living too long and I want their money. Okay, then in that situation, they cannot inherit for killing the person that they had killed. They're basically excluded from the inheritance. But that's his son. Yes, but they do not get for killing the person as basically a punishment. So here's a question. Does the night of Laylat al-Qadr differ from one country to another, since the weather and signs varies all over the world? So fair enough, what we know is that Laylat al-Qadr, it basically does not differ from, well, let me explain it better. So Laylat al-Qadr, based on your country. So look at your country. So don't say, well, what is the situation like in Mecca? So we're 8 hours, or at least you are 8 hours difference probably in America between you and Mecca, and say, oh no, that actually means my day was actually Laylat al-Qadr. No, Laylat al-Qadr is going to be during the time of night during your time. So don't worry about what time it is in Malaysia and say, oh, Laylat al-Qadr, it was probably Laylat al-Qadr in Malaysia's time, or in who knows what country's time. No, you're going to look at Layla based on the place that you are in. Don't worry about the other countries in the world or even the other weather forecasts in the other world. Don't worry about that piece of it. So I hope I explained that one. We'll end right here, inshallah. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I guess everybody is at peace.
Maybe the person who was asking the question didn't hear what you said yesterday.
Oh, that's all right. Oh, the piece about yesterday. I actually, because of what you had asked yesterday in regards to there we go. I actually have it for you up there, in where I want you to look at this Laylat al-Qadr, all right, in where the hadith really says that whoever would stand up for Laylat al-Qadr, and of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would basically forgive their sins, the past sins and the future sins, and they're basically the nights of witr, basically the odd nights. So it could be the 9th, it could be the 7th, it could be the 5th, it could be the 3rd, and we're talking about the 9th, not the 9th day, but we're talking about, so it could be the 29th, the 27th, or the 25th, or the 23rd, or even the last day of Ramadan. All right. And
did you say future sin?
Yes, future sin.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
Yeah, it's worth Nora. It's worth actually working. Let's see. And the signs for Laylat al-Qadr, they're basically, number one is that the sky would be Safia. The sky would be basically clear, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh no, it was rainy, that means it's not it. No. And the moon would be Safia, and it would be a bright moon. And of course, it would be a calm night in where it's not cold and it's not hot. And of course, you would, even in space, you would not actually see all these meteorites slashing and all of that, because there's no shayateen. And you would see the sun, the morning of that day, would actually not have the rays that is like the other days. But that doesn't mean if I took a camera and started taking photos of every single night and say, this is it. We would just look into some of these signs anywhere just to give you like an inspiration. And the qamar would be Laylat al-Badr, with the moon would be as if it is full moon, and where shaitan would not go out with it. So you could see this hadith right there, and where, yeah, there's let's see, Shu'aib al-Arnaut, and basically hadith Hasan. So it's a type of hadith Sahih. All right. So this is basically to help you just see some of those signs, but I wouldn't necessarily go into all of that, and where taking photos and seeing all that. But hey, some people are obsessed with it. And yeah, so just work on trying to, I guess, get to this magnificent reward by doing qiyam, dua, doing dhikr, doing istighfar throughout those nights. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us and from you all. And Rabbi yahfadkum. I knew someone was going to ask the question again, so I had to get it ready beforehand. I was anticipating. Oh, people are going to ask me this question. I did actually forget to talk about a woman's diya. Let me explain this one really quick. For the diya, a woman's diya, is it equivalent and equal to a man's diya? This is a huge debate in our modern times, but it wasn't a debate before. Let's do it again. It wasn't a debate before. Let's see, because when we're looking at diya, the diya is not the price of a human being. Please, keep that in mind. So when we say the diya of, let's say, a kafir or a mu'min, it's not the price. It's basically to compensate for the sin itself, or to compensate for what the person had done. Let's see, we know that, of course, diya was mentioned in a number of ayats, so we're not going to go in details, but where the question about diya, of course, we know that diya in general, unanimously agreed upon between scholars, that there is a diya to pay, unless the people would forgive that diya. Yet for the woman's diya, what actually brought in, I would say, what brought in the controversy is two things. Number one is that, let's see if you can see the name right there. What brought in the Ibn Ulayya and al-Asam, they basically had said, and even during our times, al-Qardawi had said that a woman's diya is equal to a man's diya. And they had regarded that the evidence for that is nafs al-mu'mina mi'a min al-ibn, that the Prophet ﷺ said that the believing soul is basically 100 camels. So this is basically talking about that. But of course, this hadith, in where you could see la asla lahu, there's no evidence that this hadith, of course, is authentic, but this is what they had mentioned. Okay, now one thing is that all the other scholars, they had regarded that a woman's diya is actually half the man's diya. Wait a minute. So does that mean the value of a woman is half the value of a man? No, because what diya was supposed to be is not compensation for the human life. In other words, let's look at this. Let me explain it by demonstration right there. So let's say we have, maybe we can draw, okay? If, let's see, this man, okay, he wasn't supposed to be pink, but this is what got out. That's okay. Maybe, okay. This man was killed and this woman was killed. Okay, the diya, we're going to make her nice hair. All right, let's see. I'm very bad at art. See? Okay, this woman. Now, if this man is killed, the diya is basically going to be paid to the family. It's basically going to be to compensate the family, in other words, his wife and his children, because he was supposed to be the breadwinner. So this is to compensate. So in that situation, the wife and the children are getting a lot of money for the death of their father. Well, certainly it's, yes, not equivalent to the amount of loss, but this is to compensate. Remember, this is to compensate. Now, if the one to be killed, oh no, my little friends are gone. Okay, here we go. We brought them back. Oh, that was fast. Oh, he was killed, but we brought them back. Okay, now, if the person that was killed was the woman, then in that situation, the compensation goes basically to the woman's family, basically the father, the husband, etc. That's who takes the diya. So it's basically into half. All right. So in other words, it wasn't because her life was of less value, but it was really because of the sin, and because even the loss, the woman is usually not the breadwinner, so the man is really getting half the amount, where if it was the opposite way. So this is in order to explain that when we talk about diya being half, this is not to say that this is to give women less value, but this is basically to give, remember, this is basically to compensate on at least the harm that was caused. The harm that was caused for the family and not necessarily the value for that person. Let's see. الإمام الشافعي said لم أعلم مخالفا من أهل العلم قديما ولا حديثا في أن دية المرأة نصف دية الرجل. He basically said that I do not know any differences of opinions between scholars, not in the past and not in our contemporary times. And mind you, Shafi'i died on 205 Hijriya, that the woman's diya is half the price or half the value of a man's diya, which is 50 camels. الطبري said لا خلاف بين جميع أهل العلم. الطبري also said there are no differences of opinions between scholars that the diya for a believing woman is half the amount of the believing man. And of course, he said, and whoever says otherwise is basically not an opinion that we would necessarily take in consideration. Ibn al-Mundhir had also said, أجمعوا, scholars had unanimously agreed that the same thing. Ibn al-Mundhir, al-Aini, Ibn Abd al-Barr, Maliki. And I want you to look at this. So you're looking at, well, al-Tabari had his own madhab. Ibn Abd al-Barr is Maliki. And he said, أجمع العلماء. He said exactly the same thing. All the scholars had unanimously agreed on that. Where did he say that in? الاستذكار and التمهيد. Okay. Let's continue. And let's see. Sarakhsi basically Hanafi madhab. He also said أجمع أهل العلم على أن بدل نفس المرأة على النصف من بدل نفس الرجل. السرخسي Hanafi madhab. He also said the scholars had unanimously agreed that the value, basically the diya that is basically on half. And let's see. Okay. Ibn Hubayra, basically Hanbali, he also said أجمع الأئمة الأربعة على أن دية المرأة الحرة في نفسها على النصف من دية الرجل. Basically said the same thing. All scholars unanimously agreed that the diya for a woman, a free woman, is basically the half of the value of the free man. Al-Kasani, also Hanafi. And he also said ijma' as-sahaba. He said all the Prophet's companions had basically agreed that the woman's diya is half the man's diya. And as he said, because it was narrated upon Umar ibn Khattab, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Zayd ibn Thabit, and they had all said the same thing. Al-Kasani, maybe I could say a story about Al-Kasani. Should I? Kasani? So let me tell you a story about Al-Kasani. And there's, maybe I could actually put it right here. Okay, let's see. Can you see it? Okay, I want you to see it right there. Here we go. Okay, here we go. I want you to see it. Okay, yeah, well, I didn't mean it to be this way, but anyhow, so I want you to look at this. This is Bada'i Sana'a. This is Tuhfat al-Fuqaha. Tuhfat al-Fuqaha, let's see, Samarqandi, right there. So Samarqandi, this guy, Imam Alauddin Samarqandi, he basically was asked in order to get married to Al-Kasani's daughter, Fatima. He was supposed to do one job, which is explain Tuhfa. So what he did was Al-Kasani, sorry, I flipped it. Al-Kasani had actually got married to Samarqandi's daughter, but the condition was to explain the whole book. You finish the whole book, you explain the whole book, that's my daughter's mahar, you get married to her. So that's basically, yeah, Fatima Samarqandiya. Okay, so here we go. Fatima Samarqandiya. She was basically, here we go, Al-Kasani. You were going to explain this book, which is in 4 or 5 volumes, and of course you will get married to Al-Kasani's daughter. So basically that's what a Samarqandi did. Okay, all right, so this is just Al-Kasani, since he was, I just needed to say his name. Okay, Ibn Rushd Maliki, he also said Diyat al-Mar'a, he said is on half. Al-Qurtubi Maliki again, and of course you could see, let's see, Umar Ibn Abi Shayba, so giving you all those different evidences where they had actually said it. And of course, this is not basically to say that the woman's value is less, but because remember, when anyways, if the man were to be killed by mistake, then the woman would be the one to actually get the compensation. It was really in compensation for the loss of course, the support and not necessarily the loss of the family. Okay, this is it. Just wanted to explain this piece of it. Any other questions, inshallah? I know you didn't even ask this question, but yeah. Inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow, inshallah, and Rabbi yahfazkum jami'an, inshallah. We'll continue. Yeah, inshallah, tomorrow. I hope I'll be able to do it tomorrow. Tonight is what day of the week?
Okay, so the last night we have to do a big dua, right? The last 29th, right? Can we do that?
Yeah, we can do that. Oh, that would be lovely. That would be lovely.
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah, inshallah. So we are right now 2:06 p.m. Malaysian time. So inshallah, well, inshallah, hopefully that we'll be able to continue doing this tomorrow and the day after and the day after, because staying up all night is really hectic to actually wake up and do tafsir and not actually sleep for the following night. But we'll still, inshallah, do as much as we can. وسلم على سيدنا محمد and سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت. This is it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your dua, accept your dhikr, accept your qiyam, accept your siyam, and accept your salat. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.